let go. I think, I mean, it's still a struggle for me today, just like knowing which battles to choose, essentially. And then I think another one was this idea of wanting everything to be perfect. I think coming from a classroom setting, you pretty much have like the whole time to just make it perfect. There's like, you have a deadline, sure, but that the deadline is to make it as perfect as possible for that project, and I think sometimes I think I learned the whole perfection is the enemy of good. I don't know if you've heard that before, but that was
absolutely.
a common mantra. I think that was can be really stressful. If you're obsessed about making things good or amazing and perfect, like that can be really stressful to just be like, all right, like this is enough to get what we need or the learning that we need, and we can make changes with it later. And that's very scary to let go of something that could be better, right? So
I totally understand that. Yeah, I have to let go of. Well, that's kind of why I created the failure pledge, which is an experiment where I write down a pledge to myself. I underscore my name. Give myself permission to fail, screw up, and be messy. I realize I'm learning something new, blah, blah, blah. I came up with that and put it on a note card and put it on my mirror, my bathroom mirror.
Yeah.
So that way I just gave myself permission to screw up. Like, it's just going to suck. I don't care. I'm fine with it. At least so I could be free to create and not be paralyzed with, like, it's not perfect. Oh, my God.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And yeah, the iteration really is, I think, where the beauty comes out. So you mentioned a couple of times fighting battles. What do you mean by fighting battles? Can you elaborate on that?
Oh man, well, I think in a small company, that's more or less flat, like there's just a lot of strong opinions, and everyone's opinions matter a lot and can change how the product is, or how the direction of the product even, and it can get loud, it can get a little aggressive, and so by battles, I think I mean that like kind of these product decisions, and I think early on we weren't, I think figuring out how to make those decisions was, like having that process in place wasn't as established as it was in the end, and so I think just that, like fighting battles as in like having different opinions than other people.
Well, I think that is always been the battle, at least for me as well, and I think it's probably the number one challenge for all designers. It's sort of like
Sure.
You're presented with requirements and
Right.
and potentially hopefully research, and then you come up with a solution, as in a wireframe, and or maybe it's in Sketch, so it's a little bit higher fidelity, and then you present it, and everyone has an opinion, and everyone will always have an opinion. So.
Yep.
How do you defend your design? And yeah, if new designers, if you don't know exactly how to manage that conference room paradigm, which really sometimes becomes like the social dynamics of rhesus monkeys rather than building a good product. If you don't know how to manage it, you can get run over, and then it becomes the old adage, I'm a designer, not a fucking screwdriver, where it's like, hey,
Yep.
how about move it over here or move it over there? So did you develop any techniques as as your career progressed to sort of be able to better manage the design review process?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that was a pretty helpful part of the apprenticeship program that I had with you was a lot about defending design. I think, even still to this day, using the book of that book, Universal Principles of Design.
Right.
Yeah, kind of going that and having this toolkit of principles that you could work with, having knowing what in the past what's worked, having a little history, being up to date on what other companies are doing, having these competitive analysis where you research how other companies have done it and whether that's been successful. Is really helpful with this defending your design, and ultimately, like, if it comes down to it, you can always test it, right? And that's another good fail-safe out.
Yeah, it's the ultimate stalemate. If
Yeah,
all
it's
else
ultimate
fails,
stalemate, yeah.
if all else fails, we'll test it.
Yep.
One of the things that, so yes, one of the things that I found to be incredibly successful in fighting that battle, and again, yeah, we discussed it, and I think we drilled it a couple of times in the apprentice program,
Yep.
which was a lot of fun.
Yes,
was
yeah.
that if you know the design principles and you know the persuasion principles and you memorize them all, right, and you're able to point them out in interfaces as you just sort of surf the web casually, then when you make a design decision, it's based on principle, not necessarily your intuition or what you think looks good. And so when you're in a conference room with a bunch of PMs who are new, potentially, telling you the way that it should be, or maybe move the button over there, you can instantly say, well, that breaks the law of proximity, or that breaks the law of, that is a global control and it has a global ramification, and our global navigation should all be the same. So there's the law of symmetry or similarity. And then you've also got Fitts law, right? Which is the, things that are close. I'm praying that Fitts law I'm giving it the right definition, because I'm like, I think that's Fitts, but or maybe it's proximity. But the idea that, and I see this all the time, is like, the feedback that I get is maybe put this button way over here, because why? Because no one really can explain why, but what it is, it's sort of like, it's like if you get into a car and you say, well, let's take the ignition switch and put it in the trunk. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, why not? Because there's no relationship there. So the idea of taking things that have a relationship, which is ultimately to accomplish a goal, getting in a car and moving from point A to point B, are grouped together. I see chunking as a big one too. A lot of people, they love their text and they'll just give blocks and blocks of text. And so when you understand that, hey guys, text is a cognitive red line. What does that mean? It means that you're basically making me as a user do a couple of push-ups before I can proceed. I don't want to read text. So yeah, knowing the principles will absolutely, make you wicked in the conference room, being able to defend your design. And then you get seen as, the subject matter expert. And then they say, well, let's just refer to your opinion. But that does take time. It absolutely does.
Yep.
Yeah, it's big one. It's the battle that I think all designers fight at some stage, and we all sort of figure out ways to make it work for us, including just like, yeah. Anyway, well, good. I'm glad to hear that that's going better for you.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, what is your? Let me just ask you this: some of your biggest or the biggest failure to date as a UX designer?
Oh man, I don't know how to answer that.
Like, is there any regrets that you look back like, oh, I could have done that better? Or...
Let's see. Failures. Whew. All right.
Failures are great because that's where most learning happens.
I mean, I think I don't have any failure like projects that I can think of. Like, I mean, there definitely were, but like, I think maybe my approach to some things, I would say like originally, or not originally, but when I was an early designer, I valued originality really highly, like being the first to do this, um, making like kind of making my claim to fame, and I think that was really exciting, to lead something or be the first. Um, and I think, what I learned is like original doesn't always mean good,
Sure.
and ultimately that's your job as a designer to make something that people can use. And a lot of times if you provide things that are original, it could be novel or cool for a second, but maybe it's not usable, And I think it took a little time for me to make that switch from wanting to make something totally original that is amazing to wanting to make things that are usable. And ultimately, that's what I strive for now is how quickly can someone figure out how to use this, or how quickly do they understand like certain concepts, or how quickly can they go to the checkout cart and maybe like not even just how quickly, but how conscious of that decision are they making? Are they in the right place, um, or do they have all the information they need to even go to proceed on to the next step? So I think um, it's easy to be too focused on originality, and then on the other side, I think it's also can be too easy to be focused on certain metrics that aren't necessarily helpful. And so being able to kind of scope out and look at like what's the overall goal of the project, and be able to think about all the type of metrics and stuff that you need. I think was something that I've learned, I guess, and maybe an early failure is yeah.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I've seen, yeah, new designers sometimes are like, let's reinvent the drop down. And you're
Yes,
like,
yes, exactly.
wait a minute. And I'm a big fan of finding patterns that exist. And for those of you who are new, a pattern is sort of like a control that people are familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
The way things work and move that you see consistently on mobile devices and or web or whatnot. But yeah, it's like, let's not reinvent the wheel on a drop down if we don't have to. Let's create the unique piece someplace else. But I
Yes.
totally understand that. And I get that too in meetings where someone will just say, "What if when you press a button, right? What if when you press a button there's this thing that does this?" And you're like, and and there's a fine line there because you're like, well, that could be really awesome. But then again, it comes down to, and this is the biggest question I ask when defending a design, is like, what is the primary user goal?
Yep.
Does that support that?
Yep.
Right? Is it a risk to user goal? That's like my mantra in every meeting. Is it a risk to user goal? If it's not, then we move on.
Totally. Yes.
I totally get that. Boy, I tell you, that is I see that a lot. Well, that's fantastic. So if you were to give, with all your experience so far, if you were to give, I guess, let me rephrase that. What advice would you give to new or aspiring UX designers?
All right. Let's see. Advice.
See if you can give me 5. We'll start with 5.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I think the first thing would be for people who are new to the field. I think learning about how varied and deep the design field is. It's not just being a designer, or what I eventually learned is like there's so many facets of design that you can be in. All the way from user research to research design, information architecture, visual design, interaction design, UI engineering, prototyping, and I think it's initially really daunting, I would say.